In this lesson, we shift from working with single values to working with collections, data structures that hold many values under one name. The big idea is that each collection type comes with a different set of guarantees. Things like whether order matters, whether you can change it after creation, whether duplicates are allowed, and how you retrieve items. Once you understand those trade-offs, choosing the right tool becomes much more natural, and reading other people's Python code gets a lot easier.
On the slide you can see the 4 core collection families we'll focus on. You can think of them as different kinds of containers. One is built for ordered sequences you often modify, one keeps an ordered sequence fixed, one focuses on uniqueness rather than position, and one stores pairs so you can retrieve values by a key instead of by index. As we move through the lesson, we'll anchor each concept to small code examples so the differences feel concrete, not abstract.
Before we dive into code, let's lock in what this lesson is really about. Collections are the core tools Python gives you to represent groups of data. The goal isn't to memorize 4 names, but to understand the trade-offs each structure gives you. Things like order, mutability, uniqueness, and fast lookup, so you can pick the right one for the job.
Notice how the slide emphasizes the 4 types we'll use throughout the lesson. In practice, you'll keep asking simple questions. Do I care about the order of items? Do I need to change the container over time? Do duplicates matter? And do I want to retrieve values by position or by a label? As we go, I'll point out which structure matches the example on screen, and why it's the most natural fit.
Let's start with lists. They're the most common way to store a sequence of items in Python. The key point is that a list is a sequence where position matters, so you can talk about first, second, and so on. And unlike some other sequence types, lists are designed to be changed over time. You can update elements, grow the list, or shrink it. Also, Python won't stop you from storing the same value more than once. Duplicates are perfectly fine.
In the example on the right, we create a list of 3 numbers and store it in a variable called ages. The square brackets are the visual signal. This is a list. Because order matters, the first number is in position 0, the next is position 1, and the last is position 2. And since lists are mutable, if you later decide one value is wrong, you can replace it directly without rebuilding the whole structure.
Lists become really powerful when you start using them as containers for real measurements. You can build an ordered sequence of values, add new observations as they arrive, and then compute simple summaries from the whole collection. This pattern, collect values, update the collection, then aggregate, is one of the most common building blocks in data analysis. The main idea is that the list holds the dataset, and functions like sum and len let you turn that dataset into a meaningful statistic.
Let's walk through the code on the right. First, we create a list called ages with 4 float values, so we're clearly treating it like a small dataset. Then we call append with a new value. That line modifies the same list in place by adding one more observation at the end. After that, we compute an average by taking the total with sum and dividing by the number of elements with len, storing the result in average_age. Finally, we print it, and you can see the numeric output produced by that calculation.
A tuple is another sequence type, so it still behaves like an ordered container. Positions matter, and you can access elements by index. The big difference from a list is that a tuple is meant to be stable. Once it's created, you treat it as a fixed record. That makes tuples a good fit when the structure represents a single bundle of related values that shouldn't be edited accidentally.
On the right, the variable patient stores a small record. An identifier, an age, and a sex label, grouped together in one tuple. Notice the parentheses and commas. That's the typical tuple syntax. Then the next lines access specific fields using indexing. Patient 0 pulls the first element, patient 1 pulls the second. So you can read parts of the record easily, but the idea is that you don't rewrite the record in place like you would with a list.
Tuple unpacking is a convenience feature that lets you take a tuple and assign its elements to multiple variables in a single step. It works because tuples are ordered. Python matches values from left to right. This is often cleaner than pulling items out with indexes, especially when the tuple represents a small fixed record and you want readable variable names for each part.
In the code example, dimensions is a tuple with 2 numbers, a width and a height. The next line assigns those 2 values in one move. Width gets the first element and height gets the second, purely based on position. Then the print calls show that the variables now hold the individual values. Compared to writing dimensions 0 and dimensions 1, this is shorter and usually easier to understand at a glance.
So why choose a tuple instead of a list? Because a tuple signals this is a fixed record. When the structure and meaning of the data must remain stable, immutability becomes a feature. It reduces the risk of accidental edits and helps preserve data integrity. Conceptually, lists feel like containers you keep updating, while tuples feel like small snapshots of information that represent something real in the world.
Look at the example. The patient variable stores an ID, an age, and a sex label as one bundled record. If you stored this in a list, nothing would stop you from accidentally changing the order or overwriting one element later. With a tuple, the intent is clearer. This record is meant to be read and used, not mutated. It's a simple way to make your code safer and more self-explanatory when you're dealing with identifiers and metadata.
Now we move to sets. A set is a collection focused on uniqueness. It stores items without caring about order, and it automatically removes duplicates. That makes sets ideal when you're thinking in terms of membership, whether something is present or not, rather than position. This is why sets are often described as being great for fast membership checks and for cleaning or deduplicating data.
In the code example, unique underscore numbers is created using curly braces with a few integers inside. Then we add a new value with add, and remove an existing value with remove, so you can see that sets support these in-place updates. When we print the set, the output shows the values in a different order than we type them. That's normal, because sets don't preserve ordering. The key takeaway is, if your goal is unique values, this structure does the work for you.
Once you have sets, the real power comes from set operations. These let you combine groups, find what they share, or isolate what's unique to one group. Conceptually, it's the same logic you use when comparing categories in real life. What's in A or B, what's in both, what's only in A, and what's in one but not the other. That's why sets show up naturally in data analysis. They're a clean way to deduplicate values and to compare groups without writing loops.
Look at the code block. We start with two sets. Set underscore A has 3 elements and set underscore B has 3 elements, with 1 overlap. Then we compute 4 results. The union uses the pipe operator, which merges everything from both sets into one. The intersection uses the ampersand, which keeps only the common element. The difference uses minus, which keeps what's in the first set but not the second. And symmetric difference uses the caret, which keeps the non-overlapping elements from both sides. The Venn diagram on the right is basically a picture of what each of those operations is doing.
A dictionary is Python's go-to structure for labeled data. Instead of storing values in a sequence where you must remember positions, a dictionary maps keys to values. The key idea is meaning. You retrieve information using a name, like age or ID, not an index like 0 or 1. This is why dictionaries show up everywhere in real-world code. They match how data is described outside programming, as fields with labels.
On the right, you can see a patient represented as a dictionary. Each piece of information is stored under a key, like ID, age, and sex. Curly braces define the dictionary, and each entry is a key-value pair separated by a colon. This makes the code self-explanatory. You don't need to remember that position 1 means age. And below that, you can see multiple patient dictionaries grouped together as a small collection, basically a simple structured dataset made of labeled records.
Dictionaries are all about key-based access. Instead of asking for the second item, you ask for a specific field by name. That means keys act like labels, and they must be unique inside the dictionary. Otherwise, you wouldn't know which value a label refers to. Another important point is flexibility. Dictionary values can be any type, including numbers, strings, lists, or even nested dictionaries, which makes this structure a natural match for real-world records.
In the code, patient is a dictionary with several fields. Name is a string, age and height are numbers, scores is a list of numbers, and info is itself another dictionary, so you're seeing multiple data types living inside one record. Below, the square bracket syntax shows how you access or assign values. Patient, Age refers to the value under the key age, and setting it with an equals sign updates that field. The comments on the right are highlighting the types, so you can visually connect each key with the kind of value it holds.
In data analysis, dictionaries matter because they model structured records, one entity, many named fields. That structure matches how real datasets are described, attributes with labels, so you don't rely on position or memory to interpret a value. This is also why dictionaries align naturally with formats like JSON and with API responses. Most real-world data comes as key-value pairs, and Python dictionaries are the native way to represent that.
On the right, the record variable is a compact example of a structured observation, a name field and a scores field that holds multiple values. The important pattern is labels on the left, values on the right. You can read it almost like a form. And once data is in this shape, it's easy to pass it around, store records in a collection, convert to JSON, or feed the fields into downstream steps in a data or machine learning pipeline.
At the highest level, a collection is simply a way to group multiple values into one object. That sounds basic, but it's a huge step, because most real problems aren't about a single number. They're about sets of observations, records, or categories. Collections also let you give structure to those values. You can represent sequences, unique groups, or labeled fields, depending on which collection type you choose.
On the right, you can see the four main collection types shown side by side. They all hold multiple values, but they express different kinds of structure. Lists and tuples represent sequences, sets represent uniqueness, and dictionaries represent labeled fields. The many examples highlight the different syntaxes, and the takeaway is that Python uses these containers as the basic building blocks for representing structured data.
Choosing the right collection is really about choosing the meaning you want your data to have. If your data is a sequence and you care about order, you're in list or tuple territory. Then the next question is whether it should be changeable. If it needs to evolve, use a list. If it represents a fixed record, use a tuple. And when the core idea is labeled fields, access by meaning rather than by position, that's when a dictionary is the natural choice.
The boxes on the right summarize the key differences. A list is ordered and mutable, so it's perfect for a growing dataset or a sequence you'll update. A tuple is ordered but immutable, so it works like a stable record. And a dict is a key-value mapping, which is why it feels like a form or a JSON object. You read and write values by their key names. The slide's main message is that the structure you pick isn't just syntax. It communicates intent to anyone reading your code, including you later.
Iteration is the bridge between having data and doing something with it. The core idea is universal. Once you have multiple values in a collection, you can loop over them and apply the same operation to each element. That's why iteration shows up everywhere in programming and data work. It's the foundation of filtering, transforming, and summarizing datasets. The syntax stays almost the same across different collection types, even if the underlying structure changes.
In the example, data is a list with 3 values. The for loop takes one element at a time and assigns it to X, then print outputs the current value. So you should picture the loop as walking through the collection step by step. And the note on the slide is important. This exact loop pattern works not only for lists, but also for tuples, sets, and even dictionaries. Iteration is a shared behavior, even though what you get on each step can differ depending on the structure.
Let's close by reinforcing the main message. These 4 collection types are the core building blocks for working with structured data in Python. The collection you choose isn't a cosmetic choice. It affects how you store information, how safely you can manipulate it, and how naturally you can express your intent in code. Once you're comfortable with these structures, a lot of data processing logic becomes simpler because you're using containers that match the shape of the problem.
What I take from this slide is the workflow mindset. Pick the structure that fits the data, then use loops to process it smoothly. Lists, tuples, sets, and dictionaries each have their sweet spot, and practicing with small examples is how you make that instinctive. So whenever you're coding, try to pause and ask, do I need order? Do I need mutability? Do I need uniqueness? Or do I need labeled fields? That question alone will guide you to the right collection most of the time.
Nice work. At this point, you've built the mental model for how Python represents groups of data. sequences when order matters, unique collections when you care about membership, and labeled records when you want meaning-driven access. That foundation is what makes real code feel manageable, because most programs are just data plus the rules you apply to it.
And you can see where we're going next. Instead of focusing on the data containers themselves, we start organizing the code that uses them. Think of it as moving from small snippets to cleaner structure, splitting logic into reusable parts, and keeping things tidy when a project grows beyond a single file.